Hi everybody, hope everyone is well. Welcome back, hope everything went well with your second tutorial. We're going to be looking at tutorial 3 today, which is covering formatting techniques on publishing Word documents using Microsoft Word. We'll start very basic. I'll get people to type, or first of all create a Word document, a blank Word document. Once you've done that, we'll type a basic sentence out as per 3.1 on our exercises. I can be any size you want me to be. Okay, so once we've typed that out, we're just going to practice some basic formatting techniques. First things first, I'll have people highlight the sample text that we've just typed and click on their home tab over here. So what we're going to first of all practice is how to change the font style. So once we've clicked on home, you'll see this group of icons appearing. This here is our font type, and we're going to change that. At the moment it's Times New Roman, and as an example, I'm going to change it to Arial Black. Actually, you know what I will do? I will change it to normal Arial. Okay, so all you simply do is just drop down here and select the sample type that you like. From here, I'm going to change the size. Now, typically, most documents will either be a 10 or a 12 size. I'm going to change it to 14 to make it nice and large. And then I'm going to click on the B, which stands for bold. And then I'm going to click on the I to make it italic. So essentially what I'm covering so far on the other page is I'm covering now exercise 3.2. And I will also underline the text. So quite basic, it's just a matter of knowing where these icons are and ticking as you go. Now what I want you to do is I'm going to give you a bit of time now to type the paragraph that you can see underneath 3.2 and practice those formatting techniques. I'll give you a few moments now. I'm just going to take the microphone off so that you can have a bit of time to practice that. Okay, I hope everyone went well with practicing those functions. Now we're going to be looking at 3.3, exercise 3.3, which first of all covers orientation. Now we're at our home page right now. I want to have people now click on the page layout. And from here, we're going to locate this orientation icon. And how this is used is if, for example, I'm going to make this page smaller. If, for example, you are creating a document and it's a flyer which runs along the page this way, as opposed to running down the page. In order for information not to get cut off, if you would change the orientation by clicking on that and clicking on landscape. And as you can see here, it presents our page along this way as opposed to up and down. Okay, so that's very basic. You've got two options, either portrait or landscape. Next, we'll look at tab stops. Now, to locate the tab stops, you need to first of all make sure that it's been clicked on. Okay, so if you go to View and then go to, you should find this ruler here. Okay, now If yours is like this, if your screen shows that, you need to go here and click on the ruler in order for you to see the tab stops appearing on your screen. But I want to make a note that as a default, when you're starting a new document, the ruler is normally clicked on. Okay? Okay, so how do these tab stops work? Let's assume here that you've typed the document and you've got paragraphs. Okay, I've just typed in some sample information here. I'm going to change the formatting. I'm going to go back to home and just change my formatting back to how it was previously. Undo all that. Okay, now we've got our ruler over here. Now, as you can see here, these tab stops, if I want to make my paragraphs indented, if I click on the tab stop and drag it, as you can see here, it moves the paragraph in. So as you can see, you've got two tab stops, and each of them has a different function. Enables you to indent your margins accordingly. So what I'll get people to do is type some information out and practice, identify where your tab stops are, and essentially just play around with that and see how you go. There's another thing I want to highlight as well. If you were to hit tab on your keypad, this also essentially does the same thing. Although your tab on your keypad will only indent it as per how it's been defined, whereas this enables you to pre-select exactly how you want the margins to sit. So that other method that I just quickly showed you is by hitting tab on your keypad. I'm going to put the microphone off so you can practice that, and then we're going to be looking at margins. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at margins and paper size. So to get to setting your margins, what we need to do first of all is go to the page layout type, which is over here, or the page layout tab. And then we find our margins icon, which is here. And essentially what this does is, depending on what document you're trying to publish, enables you to set the margins accordingly. So for example, if we wanted a narrow margin, so if we wanted our information to start right in the corner and, for example, go all the way to the end of the document, you would select this narrow margin, as you can see here. Okay. Whereas normal, which is what you have as default, is as follows. Okay. If we wanted, there's different types. So it's essentially a matter of you going through the margins and selecting what you believe is going to suit best. Now, normally this is done at the stage when you are either going to finalize your document or if you're going to print it. So for example, if you print a document and information is too close to the border, or it's not sitting nicely in your page, then you can go in here and modify the margins as needed. Second thing that I'd like to cover is paper size. Now once again, this comes back down to when you are finalizing your document. You may, for example, want to print your information off onto a larger A3 piece of paper, for example. In that scenario, what you need to do is go to size, okay, and select the type of paper size you're using in your printer, for example. So typically it's A4, but if, for example, you're using A3, then you select A3, and you can see that A3 paper size is a lot larger than A4, and hence it changes accordingly. So what I'm going to do, I'll get people now simply to practice what I just covered then, using the margins and orientation. That's just a matter of you playing and just, you know, it's spending time, you know, playing around with this and making changes and seeing what it can and what it can't do. Okay, so next we're going to be looking at line spacing and page break. Now I'm going to put the microphone off again so that you've got a bit of time to play around with that. Okay guys, now we're going to be looking at line spacing and creating our first indent. So essentially line spacing is if you've got information clustered in paragraphs, for example, and you wanted to space things out to make it easier to read, you can use this line spacing function in order to space the information out so it's more clear and easy to understand. So first of all, what we need to do is you need to go to your home button in your ribbon, and then from there you need to select the line spacing button, which is there in the which is called the paragraph group. And then from there you've got options, and then you can, for example, select different options. Now typically as a default, I believe it would be 1 to 0. Now, for example, if we decide to change that to 2 or 3, you'll see that the line spacing becomes even wider. So that's how to change the line spacing. We'll now look at creating a first line indent. So you put your cursor at the beginning or at the end of the information or your sentence, okay? And we're going to practice the first line indent. Now what I'll get people to do now is to type out the information on page 6. That might be a little bit difficult to read, but we'll type some information out now so we can practice the first line indent. Okay, so just to speed things up, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this information. Actually, you know what I'll do? I will bring this information up here so we can practice. Okay. Okay. All right, let's now practice first line indent. So first of all, you need to place the cursor anywhere within the first paragraph of your sample text. Then go to your Home tab, which is in the Paragraphs group that we covered earlier. Click the launcher, which is essentially finding that. So that essentially is what we're referring to. That little icon is what we are referring to by the launcher. By clicking on that, it opens up a box which enables you to make further modifications. Now, in this scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from default, which is, what do we have as a default for the indentation? It's 1.27. So, for example, if we wanted to change that, change the first line, we will then change that amount, or change it to 0.05. And then that, as you can see, that brings it across that way. Now, if I want to indent it to bring it in further, once again, go to the launcher and go into the first line. Okay, and there we go. Okay, let's actually make it 2, for example. Okay, and click on OK. And as you can see now, the first line has been indented by 2 centimeters. So you can practice that now. Okay, next we're going to be looking at the Views tab. Okay, so to find the Views tab, we once again go to the ribbon section of our document and we find Views there. Okay, click on that. And we're going to basically change the view. So at the moment, it's a print layout view. Now if I wanted to, for example, read a document, I could change that to, for example, a read mode. And as you can see here, it removes all the unnecessary clutter and enables a document for you to quite easily read. So that's fairly straightforward. So I'll ask people now to revert back to where we were previously. Now to change back, okay, bottom right hand side, you will see an icon here. Okay, so if you click on that icon, bottom right, print layout, it brings you back to where you were earlier. Okay. Now what we're going to do is practice page breaks. So let's just assume here that you've typed the document out and this is our sample page, or our first title page, shall we say, and we wanted to, for example, start the rest of our document on the next page. Right? So we wanted, let's assume that we're typing a resume and the first page or the first bit of information contained our name and our age and address, and the next page we wanted to have our rest of the information of our CV. So we want to have a break here, or what we call a page break. So to put the page break in, we first of all go to page layout once again. So that's over here, and then we go to breaks, which is here, and we want to put a page break. Okay, so as you can see, it's created the page break, and the rest of our information is up here. As I mentioned, a name, address, and whatnot, if we're doing a resume, and the rest of our information on our resume is on the following page. So that's essentially what a page break is and what it does. Okay, now what I'll get people to do now is go back to the first page over here. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll show you how to remove a page break. So I've put my cursor here, as you can see here. If I hit backspace on my keypad, you'll see that it has automatically removed the page break. Okay? Now, we're going to practice this command, which is a command R. And this essentially is a pre-programmed set of information that Microsoft has already created in Microsoft Word, which is essentially used for training and documentation purposes. So instead of having to type text out in order, for example, for me to show you how to do various commands for formatting purposes and whatnot, I can quite simply add some sample text into my document in order for us to essentially edit and modify and whatnot for training purposes. Okay, so it's quite a useful tool, especially for what we're doing here. So if I now type in equals R and open brackets and close brackets and hit enter, automatically some information will appear on your document, and this information would already be formatted. So as you can see here, it's already formatted. It's got paragraphs, indentation. It's obviously it's got certain type of text and whatnot. And as I said earlier, this can be therefore used to show you how to do certain things. So for example, if I put my cursor here and hit my tab button, it will indent that information. If I wanted to, for example, highlight this information and bring it across as follows, I can click on the tabs and drag that across. If I wanted to further highlight that information, I can go to the command button and bold it. So it enables, from a training perspective, information to further modify. So I'll ask people now to practice how to use or how to type that command in. Okay, let's continue. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to practice changing our line spacing, which we've already covered earlier. So essentially what I want you to do is place your cursor anywhere in the first column. So I'm going to bring this back because I changed it earlier. So I'm going to click on my tabs and play around with them and bring it back to where they were. Like that. Okay. Alright, so I've put my cursor anywhere there in the first paragraph, sorry. And I want to first of all locate my line spacing button, which is over here. And I can, for example, make that information spaced out accordingly. In the document here, it's asking for you to space them out 2.0. Okay. So that's essentially line spacing. We've already covered that. Bullets, numbers, and page numbers. Okay. Now, what we want to do is type the following underneath here. Apple, orange, grape, mango, and cherry. And first of all, we're going to practice how to put a bullet. So we want to put this information, arrange it into a bullet format. So it's quite simple. We've highlighted that information. We've gone out onto our home tab over here, located the bullets section, and click on bullets. And there's an arrow next to bullets. So for example, if you wanted to choose a different type of bullet, you've got a few different options there to choose from. Okay, so that's bullets. We can also, instead of having bullets, we can have numbers. Okay, so next to bullets, you've got a few different options for numbers, number schemes. Once again, we can select that. So, yeah, quite basic as you can see there. Okay. Page numbers. This is quite important. So as you can see here on your document or on the exercise on the bottom right hand side, you can see what we've typed in tutorial 3, page number 12. Now, by using page numbers, this will automatically place this information into the header, which is the top part of the screen, or the footer, which is the bottom part of the screen. Okay, so in this exercise, we're going to practice putting a page number, okay, on the bottom part of the screen. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all is go to insert. So what we did earlier is we went to the insert section of the ribbon, and then from there we went to page numbers. Okay, then drop down gives you a few different options, and we've selected bottom of the page, and you've got a few different options once again, and you can select, for example, the second option, which places the page number in the middle of the page. Okay, so we've covered that. Aligning paragraphs is exercise 3.6. Okay, so what I'll ask people to do now is type in to the bottom part of their screen that command to create a paragraph, which was equals RAND open bracket 1 close bracket. Enter. and this one stands for the first paragraph. So earlier, where we didn't type in the number, it provided, or it created the entire information. Now we've only identified the first paragraph. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use that first paragraph to practice how to change the paragraphs. Okay, so the first one is we're going to use, first exercise is we're going to create a right aligned paragraph. Okay, so we first of all go to home, once again, find the paragraph section, and then we locate the right aligned. Okay, essentially by clicking on that, you'll see now the document skewers to the right hand part of your page. So that's called right aligned. If we wanted to left align it, which is typically what you see, you'll simply click on left aligned, and you'll see now that all the information is hard against the left part of your margin. Okay, and then you've got the centered, which essentially brings the information to the middle of your page. So if you want to click on centered, you'll find that information gets centered. Okay, so you can practice that. Quite simply, it's right aligned, left aligned, and centered. Once you've practiced that, we will now look at justifying. Okay, so once again, select the paragraph that you've created. So highlight the paragraph if you haven't already. Go to your Home tab and click on the Justified button. Or there's a shortcut which is Control+J. Okay, so by clicking on the Justified, what that does is it Justified gives your document a clean, creasy edge, it says here, so it looks more polished. So as you can see here, the information or text is spread out so that it's once again hard up against your margins to left as well as the right. Whereas if you were to just go left, you'll see that the left aligned is hard up against, but the right is not. Okay, so that's essentially the functioning of the aligned. Lastly, we're going to be looking at columns, how to create columns. Okay, so once again, what we want to do is highlight the information that we have, and we're going to create columns out of this information. So we go to Page Layout tab once again, and we find our columns. And once we've done that, we click on two columns, and it breaks that information up into two columns. So essentially the document there covers a few additional points. You can put your cursor in the middle of a sentence, and that will also enable you to create a second paragraph on column 2. Okay, so that covers formatting a Word document. We'll continue formatting tutorial 4 next time we meet. For now, as I said earlier, practice makes perfect. Go over what we've just covered. You'll find that it can do more than what I've just covered right now, but it will give you a good idea as to what the power of this program is. Thank you for listening.